am super pumped to talk about the most interesting and important topic in the age of AI today. And as you've heard, trust is the new currency for the AI economy. Firstly, thanks Anahita for offering to do the Fireside Chat. And I know you are famously customer zero at Snowflake. But before we dive into that, tell us, as somebody from data and analytics space and somebody who's leading data analytics teams for these big tech companies, what does trust really mean in the context of data and AI?
Thank you. Hi, Vino. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the Tech Equity AI Summit for the warm invitation as well. Yeah, I'll talk about particularly what trust means in the data and analytics landscape. So as Vino mentioned, I am the Chief Data Officer for Snowflake. It's a data and AI company. We run the data and AI team. We get a chance to be the first customer of all the products that we build at Snowflake. When we talk about data and AI agents, what's important is that a data agent can give you the wrong answer very confidently. And as a user, there's no way for you to know when the data is correct. I'll give you an example. If I'm the CFO or a financial analyst in our finance team, and I go to this AI agent and ask what was my Q3 revenue, there's only one correct answer. It's very binary. You're either getting the correct answer or not. And the bar for accuracy is very high. You always need the answer to be correct for you to be able to trust and use that for making decisions. Now, LLMs are inherently probabilistic, which makes it very difficult to build a deterministic AI agent on them that consistently and always gives you the right answer. And so for us, the combination of needing the accuracy for these data agents to be close to 100%, no way for the users to be able to tell when it's giving you the correct answer or not, and the difficulty of building deterministic agents on probabilistic models is what determines the importance of that we give to this trust in the data agents.
I think trust definitely means, I know in this age, in the age of AI, we're all working with data. And at the end of the day, if I'm building a data agent, which is now powering the business decisions of a lot of these enterprises today, right? Like, I can use these LLMs, which are probabilistic, to write a story for me, or write like social media copy. And there's so many other, I want to say, low risk things that I can do, but they are not nearly as important as these data agents that are literally powering the business decisions for these enterprises today. And it really is important to consider trust as one of the biggest pillars in that case. And now tell us about your role as a Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Snowflake. I know you are famously customer zero, meaning your team are really the first frontline folks who are using Snowflake features and products, battle testing them and whatnot. How do you, when you build with Snowflake, sort of inculcate trust into the products that you build?
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe I'll talk first about my role, and then we'll talk about how do we actually build these elements of trust into these data agents. So generally, chief data officers across the industry, you have a role that's building data and AI solutions for your internal customers in order to make correct decisions, smart decisions, in order to run their operations efficiently and smoothly. I have the privilege of, on top of that, being the first customer of our own products. We are a data and AI company, and my team gets to use and battle test every solution before they get to the hand of the customers. That's an exciting opportunity because we get to give a lot of feedback as part of the product development life cycle and make sure that our solutions are ultimately as best as they can be for data personas across the industry. I also get an opportunity to meet with a lot of CDOs who are our customers across the industry, show them what we do with Snowflake and what the art of the possible is in terms of building these data and AI solutions. In terms of how do we actually build trust into these data agents. So first it starts with the foundation of correct data and defining your business logic as context that you give to these data agents. We often say that there is no AI strategy without a data strategy. And what we mean by that is that ultimately data is the foundation that your AI agent uses to give you the correct answer, particularly about your enterprise data. And so the first thing is like, how do you build those definitions as context that you give to these data agents? For example, different business terms are defined differently across different companies. Fiscal year has a different meaning at Snowflake than it has at a different company. Lifetime value of the user, retention, like all these metrics are defined differently, and there are lots of nuances on how do you define those metrics, how do you evaluate them, how do you aggregate them. And so the first step is building that foundation that translates your business logic into the foundation that you can give to these AI agents. We call it the semantic layer or gold layer of data. And we want that to be consistent across the whole company. So everyone, whether you are a financial analyst, a data analyst, or you're an AI agent, or you're a BI tool, always using the same data, so you can, as a user, trust that the answer will always be consistent and the same. So that's the first layer, is building the right data foundation. The second one is what we call trust in the model. So how do you actually, again, like make a probabilistic model give you deterministic answers, right? And so the way we have done it is through what we call verified queries. So the data team, for specific questions that we expect an agent to answer, put together a list of verified query repository that we give to these AI agents, again, as context. And so when a user comes in and asks a question, the agent then goes and finds similar questions in that and knows what query then to use to access that data, again, in the correct way. And then lastly, there's a lot of testing that happens, right? And evaluations that we do both before launch and post-launch. We have, obviously, like any product, we first launch to UAT, then we launch to beta, and we do a lot of testing. And as we learn more, we bring back, again, either building our data foundation more accurately or building more verified queries on top of that. And that's how we get to near 100% accuracy in these AI agents.
Got it. I think that is very cool how you summed up how do you build trust into data products in sort of three main pillars. One is to really have this semantic layer. Essentially, you want your organizational data grounded in single source of truth, and you build data agents on top of it, right? So that way, you're making sure any agent that is being built across different parts of the organization are grounded in the same single source of truth. And semantic layer comes definitely handy in that. I know we talk about it a lot at Snowflake, and it's good to have that out for everybody, everybody in data to also have that. And next, it's very interesting because as we talk about data agents, the concept of verified queries, which is essentially a human in the loop, because have these human analysts create these verified queries and then power your data agents with them. So that's sort of a way of really getting over the probabilistic nature of these models to bring in deterministic element to that. That's super interesting. But I have something very exciting to ask you here, because I am a customer of one of the tools that your team has built, the GTM AI assistant at Snowflake. So internally, for the folks out here, a bit of context, right? So Anahita's team builds a lot of data and AI tools for folks internal to Snowflake as well, right? So we, like me at work, we have this GTM AI assistant that I could ask questions about our sales, our marketing campaigns, or really any, I don't know, like even training and enabling myself on the latest Snowflake features and whatnot. But how did your team really go about building that assistant? Also, how do you, when you build a new assistant and like open it up to everybody to use, the first interaction is really crucial, because I'm going to try it out for the first time, and if it does not give me a good answer, I'm probably going to never come back to it. So how did you tackle that, and how did you really instill the element of trust in that product that enabled wider adoption?
Yeah, so maybe I'll first explain what this agent is, and then we'll talk about how we built it and what were the results. So GTM, or it stands for Go-to-Market AI Assistant, is a tool that we've built for our go-to-market team across sales and marketing to have access to their data, whether it's structured data, for example, revenue data, use case data, customer support data, or unstructured data. So if they want to get any information on their enablement materials or understand something about latest marketing materials, let's say on Cortex AI. And they can use a natural language interface to go in there, ask any of these questions, and get the answer in a few seconds. It's been really, really incredible in terms of creating efficiencies for our sales organization. Questions that previously would take anywhere from minutes if it was a simple search query, you wanted to go in and say, hey, where can I find the latest marketing material on Snowflake Intelligence, to questions that required previously an an analyst to actually do the work for you, which would take days or weeks, now can be answered within a few seconds. And it's really helpful to democratize access to your enterprise data across our go-to-market organization. We have seen this used daily with across 6,000 employees at Snowflake. We are answering north of 12,000 questions a week, and we have received more than 92% net promoter score, which is like highest I've ever seen across any tool that we have built. Our CEO is actually a daily user of that as well. And so the sales team use it if they want to go to a customer meeting and they want to prepare for that. They want to understand the customer better, whether to do a web search, understand what's the latest news on the customer, whether to do a competitive analysis on that customer, get a better sense of who are the competitors of them, what are the use cases they have with Snowflake, and what are the best use cases that they can then go pitch to these customers. Or they want to kind of better get a sense of like how much are they consuming with Snowflake, what are the open support tickets, etc. So all of that now is at their fingertips through natural language interface. And you're right. I mean, when we wanted to build it, it was a big question for us, is like, what are the release criteria? When are we ready to open this up to the go-to-market organization? Because as you said, it's very important that the users know that they can trust it. If they go in and ask a question and they get the wrong answer, or they don't know if this is the right answer, then you will lose that retention of the users. So we held the bar really high on the quality, and we first limited the scope of the type of questions that this agent can answer, and really define these are the type of use cases that you can use this agent for, so that we can get the quality to 100%. And then we kept adding to the scope. So now it's large enough that it's answering a majority of sales workflow questions, but then we also gave a lot of instructions to the agent on how to gracefully decline questions that it's not supposed to answer.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very interesting and powerful point that you brought up, because when we do build agents in any AI tools, really, we sort of try to cover the breadth of it, make sure, it's able to answer all the questions that it needs to. But then when it comes to matters of trust, it probably is very important for us to take one specific topic, go narrow, go deep, but make sure agent is capable of answering that specific area, like the niche area, and build that initial trust. And then maybe you can expand on the capabilities while also making sure the trust is upheld. That's a very beautiful example that you talked about.
Yeah, this was an interesting trade-off that we had to think about, right? Like the more use cases you let an agent answer, the more magical experience you create for the end user, right? Like if they can say any analytical questions that you have, you can go in there and ask. It's a very magical experience, but then it makes it much harder for you to have the right evaluation framework and like the right list of questions that you want to then test to make sure that the agent gives it the correct way. So we had to really come up with that trade-off of like, what is the scope of the type of questions that we want to answer? And then yes, we started small, got the quality very high, and then we built on it.
Got it. I think the another aspect of that is about building the quality and really, holding yourself to the highest bar when it comes to accuracy. But as most of us here, when we're thinking about this whole, build fast, move fast, break things, sort of an energy, I feel like governance and quality control and testing is almost seen as a red tape. I've been guilty of it, because you're really excited, want to build with it, and then suddenly you're have to deal with all of these things, which is essentially seen as a blocker or a red tape in a lot of ways. But from what you're saying, it seems like you are seeing governance almost as an enabler, because that's what enabled you to sort of keep the bar high, reach out to the users, build trust. But tell us more about, how do you see governance as an enabler, but how can the rest of us here also sort of come up to that?
No, that's a very good question, and one that I get very often is how do you balance innovation velocity with quality and governance, right? And how do you, to your point, maybe move fast, break things, but also how do you actually then have the trust of the users? For us, because we were talking about enterprise level data and AI agents, we've put a very high emphasis on quality and trust. And so we have, obviously we continue to move fast, but we have made sure that we don't launch anything until we have that level of quality. And we have seen that to be, as you said, an enabler to our innovation. Ultimately, when you have that level of trust, you don't lose users, you don't have your developers dealing with a lot of churn post-launch, mistakes that the agent can make. And so we have seen, once you actually focus on that quality, you can can then innovate even faster as well. But obviously it depends on the context, and we're talking about enterprise-grade data agents where the bar for accuracy is very high, and we need to get to the 100% accuracy rate.
Got it. That's interesting you say that, because so firstly, when it comes to governance, you want us to really hone in on the specifics of, well, I want to build fast, I want this feature out tomorrow and the other feature out next week. But if you keep moving that without taking governance into account, you're going to lose your users, or like churn the users. So it sort of does not make sense to like keep, the innovation velocity while dropping the governance sort of like out. So you're saying, in the long run, if I do take governance and quality into account, I will have a long-term vision of like have a lot of users who are not churning out, who have a better experience with the tool and whatnot, and that sort of offsets the governance red tape that I have to deal with early on. Is fair to say?
Right. Yes.
Gotcha. So with that said, I know we talked a lot about how data is the foundation, and we need to really focus on the foundation of data, right? Building the semantic layer and coming up with really having humans in the loop to build these verified queries, and also on top of that, really build these data governance controls about quality and whatnot. I feel like across the data foundation with the semantic layer, human in the loop verified queries, also a data governance, it's almost like a vertical integration of trust is not just at the one layer that you build an app and you call it, evaluate it in different ways, and then, do I trust that app or not? But like go levels deep, and at every layer, you want to make sure there is trust, and that's beautifully said, thanks to you. But tell us more about the foundation itself, because we talk about this garbage in, garbage out, what you put in is what you get. But you have talked about this concept of scaling the chaos for AI. Tell us more about it and how that connects to the trust and the data foundation.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a very powerful tool, but you have to really be careful about how you use it, right? So one of the things that I've seen across my career many times is and this is pre-AI, is you see, for example, a lot of dashboard sprawls, right? Like different teams building different dashboards based on different definitions, based on different data sets, and it just creates a lot of confusions for the users, right? And so they look at this dashboard, it gives them one number, the other one gives them a different number, and they constantly have to spend their time triangulating, how to make sense of that number. And so imagine if you have a scenario like that you're building, your business intelligence based on not great foundation. Now you put AI on that, you're basically scaling that chaos, right? So I call that chaos at scale. But, so the reality is it becomes even more important because it's become so easy to build AI agents, but so difficult to build high quality AI agents. It's very important that you put that emphasis on the quality, because otherwise you'll have everybody building AI agents. You don't know which one to trust. There's millions of them in every enterprise. How do you triangulate? How do you go about where do you go to find the answer to your question? It becomes really important to think about, how do you again bring that quality back into the equation?
I think that's another powerful point that you made, because AI really helps us scale anything and everything. But it also means if your data foundation is a chaos, AI is going to help scale that chaos also across the organizations, and you really want to be mindful of that. And I know you talked about the agent sprawl. I find it very interesting because I'm sure the data practitioners out here would relate to the death by dashboards phenomena. And I think agents probably are catching up to that, because everybody is now building an agent. But what does it mean? How many agents are there in the organization? Who's serving what? It definitely needs a lot more intentional, well thought out plan on how do we build this data foundation, and how does every element of the foundation, contribute to the trust that you want to build with the users. Now, tell us a little bit about your role specifically. I know you're this, chief data officer at Snowflake, but also what does it mean to be a chief data officer in the age of AI? Because one, data is the foundation for everything AI, but also we use AI in our day-to-day to really power and build this data foundation. So how does this, wave of AI has affected you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. We're actually seeing a lot of roles changing as a result of, having to work with AI. And, not only that's impacting the data teams, the AI teams, but it's also impacting, I can even tell you examples of how our marketing team is now working differently in order to give this context to the AI agents. So for my team, what has changed is that we now have a lot less ad hoc analytics that we have to deal with, because now we have built these AI agents that can answer those questions. But we have a lot more work to do in order to build the right foundations or to build these high quality AI agents. So the work hasn't reduced, but it has certainly evolved. And that's again what I see across a lot of different organizations. Our marketing team, I was having this conversation with them a few weeks ago, and they were telling me now instead of creating slides, they actually mostly create docs, because that's a much more powerful tool that you can then give that as context to these AI agents, right? And so it's interesting to see how those behaviors are changing and how everybody is like thinking in an AI native way to their work. In terms of CDOs, I'd say like there's a couple of things that are becoming really important. One is, again, quality of these agents, the accuracy, they're ultimately accountable for that, but also the business outcome, right? Like picking the right business use cases for which to focus on and build these AI tools around is very important. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And so how do you pick the most important business use case? How do you don't do AI for the sake of AI, but to actually solve a business problem, whether it's an efficiency problem, it's a growth problem? How do you understand your user journeys of your customers really well and then build solutions around that? So I would say the accountability around both business outcome and the quality of these AI tools are becoming the new role of the CDOs.
Got it. That's interesting. So AI is really coming in the sense of, well, your team are now building a lot of these AI-powered tools to enable the rest of the organization to self-serve its data and analytics for themselves, which frees up a lot of the time for your team. But also, on the other side of it, how is your team using the AI tools to build these experiences out? Because I've heard you rave about this one specific tool that Snowflake has announced recently, but I want to hear from you on how that's helping your teams.
Yeah, so this is one of the most interesting innovations that we are seeing is now using AI to build AI, which certainly accelerates innovation, but also increases the importance of quality, as we discussed, because it's, again, becoming easier and easier every day to build these agents. With one-line command, now you can build an agent, but is it actually accurate? Is it giving you the correct answer? It's very important. So yes, you're right. Snowflake just announced in private preview Cortex Code, which is an AI coding agent built for Snowflake, which enables you to build these AI agents. My team's obviously a first user of it as we're building the product, and we're very excited that it's like really enabled as a productivity tool, if you will, for the data personas to help us build these tools. But again, like the importance of quality and trust is even more so in this new age.
Got it. I think like maybe one last call out before I open it up for the audience to have their questions answered. So buckle up and get your questions ready. The last question is essentially, I know in the last few years, especially in the age of AI, right, we started with, prompt being the hottest topic in 2023, and then suddenly RAGs were, the raving topics in 2024, and this year was all about agents. And I see, like, sort of continuing on it for the next year, I definitely want to say context is the biggest focus for the, AI era for 2026. But what does context mean for a data person, right? So how are data teams going to be evolving in 2026 when we know that context is the biggest topic for AI in the next year?
So I'd say a couple of things. So yeah, what do we mean by the context that you give to this AI agent, particularly the data ones, is again like defining those data foundation, defining your business logic, and translating that into English for these data agents. So that's the first element of it. In terms of predictions, as you asked, I'd say a couple of things. So one is I do really strongly believe that AI quality control is going to become a key function, if you will, across different enterprises, because again, like it's very easy to build these agents. Like, how do you know which ones to bring into production, and how do you what are the steps of quality that you have to follow in order to be enterprise grade ready? And so I think that's one I think becomes very important next year. And then the second one is AI change management. How do you upskill your human employees, and how do you prepare everyone? How do you build that culture of curiosity, experimentation, constant upskilling of the organization? So those are the two that I think I'm seeing becoming more and more important across the industry.
I see. So from what I hear, it is that data folks are now suddenly becoming very important at work in the age of AI. And with context taking over the next year, what exactly is that context? Well, it is actually giving the right data and like grounding your AI agents with the right data. So data quality definitely is going to be the most important one. And of course, how do organizations, people adopt and really use these AI tools at work is going to be another interesting trend for the next year too. Thanks for sharing all of this with us. But I think at this time, I feel like I'm too selfish to be just getting my questions answered. I should open it up for everybody to get their questions too. And folks, if any of you have questions, you can raise your hands and we will pass the mic over to you.
Thank you for describing in really good terms at a high level how you manage the data analytics at Snowflake. I appreciate that. I've worked on governance committees in various enterprises, and I know that you in your role are serving a lot of needs of the corporation. But how does that get to the rest of the company, and how do you manage that in across many different departments? Because I know that was a challenge in other enterprises I've worked in.
Yeah, I mean, so governance is a very broad term. When we talk about it in the context of data and analytics, we have primarily two use cases in mind. One is access control, like how do you give the right access to the right person at the right time? How do you make sure, for example, back to this example of go-to-market AI assistant, how do you make sure that each sales account executive has access to only their customer account information and not what they shouldn't access? And how do you make sure that each manager, for example, only has access to the performance review of their teams but not their peers? So that's number one. And the second one is accuracy and quality. Like how do you can you actually trust that these tools giving you the correct answer? So you're right. I mean, it's always easier for me to control that level of quality within my team, but it's difficult when it's not an enterprise-wide adoption. So it does have to become really a CEO level priority to create these, as I said, quality control, if you will, disciplines, right? And whether it's, so we have what we call an AI council. Every time we want to launch a new agent, it has to go through this council and we ask specific questions that each agent has to follow in order for it to get certified so that it can be launched to enterprise grade for all of the users internally to use. So the questions we ask are, have you looked at role-based access control? What is your evaluation framework, and how do you know that this is giving you the correct answer? What is the scope of the questions that it's answering, and is it overlapping with another agent? How do you make sure there's consistency there? So we have done it that way, but I completely hear you. It's a very difficult, and it's a very fast evolving area as well. And so I think to me, this has to be a top-down CEO level priority.
Hey, thanks for the great insights that you shared with us. You briefly mentioned the speed of delivery and how to not lose the trust. So for startups, lean execution and lean delivery, that's the main way of dealing. So what would be would appreciate more advices, how to not lose the trust inside the organization and with the customers?
Yeah, I mean, it also very much depends on the context of the product that you're building. So we are talking about enterprise grade. Snowflake is obviously known for security, governance, trust, right? So like Snowflake holds the data of many of the companies that trust Snowflake with their data and their insights. So for us, building enterprise-grade products is very important that we prioritize that. Now, depending on your startup and the type of product that you're building, you have to think about that trade-off of innovation velocity and moving fast and breaking things, as Vino mentioned, versus like building that trust. So I would say, like, obviously think about the use case that you're trying to solve for. Again, for data questions and data agents, accuracy matters a lot, right? Like even if I tell you, this data agent is 90% accurate, that's not enough, because then you never know when are you in the 10% and when are you in the 90%. So as a user, if you're a financial analyst, you go in there and you're like, 10% of the time it's wrong. You're like, okay, well, how do I know when am I in that 10%? Especially because when your interface is completely in natural language, you don't see the logic that the agent used to come back with the answer, right? So for us, again, this is specific context of data and analytics agents for enterprise-grade use cases. That's the bar that we have to hold, but it depends on the product that you're building.
Semantic layer is definitely the talk in all data teams across all data organizations. Do you think semantic layer would eventually replace traditional business intelligence models? Or do you think they would coexist? Because if somebody can just go to an AI agent and ask a question, analytical question, why do they even need to go to like a traditional dashboard?
Yeah. No, that's a question that I get a lot. Are dashboards going away? And are they getting replaced by these AI agents? And I don't think so. I think there are specific metrics that everyone at the organization cares about, and it's actually a lot more efficient to start looking at your key performance indicators in a dashboard, right? Like, let's say in our sales organization, everyone cares about revenue forecasting. Everyone from an account executive to regional vice president to CRO all looks at the same data every week and like forecasting their revenue. It's not very efficient for everyone to then open an AI tool and ask a question of what is my revenue this week, right? Like it's much more efficient for everyone to open the same dashboard, same definitions, and it all rolls up accurately across the organization. Now, if you want to ask the next level question of like, why is my revenue down this week? That's, I think, where the combination of AI and BI becomes really powerful. So you always start with your main key performance indicators that you care about, and that's consistent across the company. You start with that dashboard. But within that dashboard, if you see a decline in any of the metrics, then you can ask that question. And we're actually seeing a lot of these business intelligence companies now building that AI layer within the BI landscape. So that's actually becoming very interesting. It's like, again, you start with the dashboard for your business, for your product, for your company, but the next level questions of what happened and why that previously you only had to go to your data team to answer, now you can ask these AI agents to answer.
All right. While folks are asking, I have one question which was submitted here as well. Do you imagine AI agents being able to build, maintain, or optimize semantic models autonomously in the future without hallucinating? And how do we make organizations trust these semantic layers?
Yes, so building and test. Was it building, testing, and what else? Maintaining. Building, testing, maintaining. Yes, we're already seeing that happening in smaller scales of again like AI, building AI, and across the life cycle of these data teams, whether it's ingest to summarizing your data, to doing analytics on your data, we're seeing AI starting to have those capabilities across these. Whether it will hallucinate or not, again, is dependent on the quality that you define for your data agents and like how much context and data foundation efforts you put in place to avoid that hallucination. So is it possible? Yes. Is it easy? No. You'd have to do that work of putting the quality there. But yes, I definitely see that coming out. Did I answer the whole question?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so. And I feel like there's also this new theme that is emerging, which is data for AI, because data is the foundation for AI, but also the other way around, like AI for data, because we're of course going to use AI also to power our own data foundations. That's interesting. I know there was one question up there.
Hi there. Thank you again for hosting the panel on a pretty important topic. And I think at startups, it's pretty easy to ensure data quality going into the agents are maybe more vetted, whether it's automated or manually. But at a company like Snowflake, with the sheer amount of data that you're processing, how do you guys ensure there's not garbage going in and you're properly ensuring data quality?
Can you repeat the last part of your question? Or did you hear it?
No. Okay, can you repeat the last
Sure.
part?
Basically, at Snowflake, how are you guys ensuring you're avoiding garbage in, garbage out?
Yes, so I love the garbage in, garbage out term, and again, it's becoming more important in the age of AI because it is the same thing: garbage in, garbage out. Now you have an AI agent on top of it. You just have that cycle repeat a lot faster, right? And to your point, like having AI prepare your data and then using that data to power AI, like that cycle of now using AI to build AI is like really accelerating the pace at which these AI agents can be built. And so I think the importance of how do you have that quality to make sure that all of these, it's so easy. Now it takes just minutes to build a new agent. How do you make sure that it's actually giving you the right answer? I think is very critical. And so to answer your question of how do we do this? So again, it comes back to, we do this in 3 different layers. The first layer is trust in data, so building the right data foundations, making sure that your definitions are consistent across the organization, and building that semantic data layer to translate your business logic into data analytics and into English or natural language is the first layer. That's trust in data. The second one is trust in the model. So how do you go from probabilistic model to deterministic answers for data and AI agents through what, as we said, verified query repository, human in the loop, as Vino mentioned. And then lastly is trust in the system. So having those governance and testing and evaluation criteria in place. So those are the three layers that we go around.
Mm-hmm. And if I may add something to it, because sometimes when we say, right, there is no AI strategy without data strategy, it sounds like such a cliched term to say to some of us. But if you think about it, most of the AI problems are essentially data problems. If you have a data foundation with the right governance and access control, you know only the right users are getting access to the right data. It's easy to take that foundation and build just an application layer on top of it and call it a day, right? But if you don't have that foundation already taken care of, then you have to come fix that foundation, make sure that right data is given to right users before you even build anything on top of it. So thanks for sort of calling that out and reiterating those things for us. And I see one more question here submitted for us. Can you share some do's and don'ts you've been doing at Snowflake when we talk about models that give non-deterministic answers to make them give deterministic ones?
Yes. So a few do's and don'ts. In fact, we just recently published a blog post on the do's and don'ts of building data agents. So I'm like trying to remember from memory, like what were the exact lists. So I would say the first one is start with understanding your users' critical journeys very, very clearly and like defining those use cases of, what are you building for? What questions you're solving for, and defining that scope that you're trying, a limited scope that you're trying to solve for. The second one is making sure that, again, the context that you give to your agent is clean and clear and limited. So as an example, we had the choice to make on whether we give access to all our unstructured data across Snowflake. Like we can connect these agents to all your Slack channels, all your emails, all your decks and docs, and anything that's available on your Google Drive. Or we could come up with like a curated list of specific slides and documents that is certified by our, for example, go-to-market enablement team as training materials for our sales team, that's the context that we give. So we decided to go with smaller scope of curated content that we know is accurate and trustworthy. And so that was the second piece of context. And then on the structured data, again, like having the human in the loop, writing these verified queries that can then be used for these data agents consistently. The next thing we do is when a user is using these data agents, we actually show them when a verified query is used. We have this like green badge check mark, if you will, next to the answer that then the user knows, okay, for this question, a verified query is used, so I can trust that, a human has evaluated this in my data team, so I can trust this. And then, eval and continuous testing and post-launch maintenance and testing as well.
Mm-hmm. I think when some of us also, to add to that, right, to think about this non-deterministic answers, is there any way I could make a model response deterministic? Well, that's an open research problem that we're still actively working on, right? But there are elements prior to the model and after the model has generated the input. Like she was saying, like what is the input to the model? We have control over that, so improve the quality of the context that we give in. But what is the output the model has generated? Like take the output, do some validation and post-processing and make sure, how did the model actually answer these questions for me? Ask it to generate the reasoning and see if that reasoning is grounded in the data that you provide, right? Well, we know that the models are non-deterministic, but model is really just one piece of the entire puzzle that we're building. So by really making sure the other pieces of the puzzle are sorted out, we can, to some level get to the deterministic side of the answers. With that said, do we have any more questions to wrap up?
I had a question.
All right.
All right, thank you. I had a question actually on the other side, the user side. So you mentioned a little bit about upskilling some of your employees, but also what about the users? Because you have a lot more accessibility with AI now. More untrained users are getting to use it, and the 90% correct isn't maybe going to translate for them. They don't know the back end of how it works. So what's your take on that, and how do you approach it?
No, very important question. And again, that's why I think the tools that you give to these business users who don't exactly understand how these AI models are built is very important for it to be 100% accurate, because they will use it and they will take the answer as accurate, and they will use it for decision making. So we have to make sure that the tools that we give them is accurate. But I think there are a few ways that we are doing it specifically. So one is we give them a list of these are the type of questions that the agent can answer. So they know what to use this for, what not to use this for. We also give agent instructions on how to gracefully decline when a question is not within the scope. So, you go in there and you ask, for the food recipe or ask a politics question, the agent knows to just say, this is not within the scope of the questions that I can answer, and declines to answer that question. I think that really helps reduce hallucination, is like defining the scope. Next, we have, again, like markers like a green check mark. When we know that a verified query is used, that we know that you can trust it, we show that as a visual in the response to the user. So they can have this additional element of trust there as well. So there are different ways that we can do it. Again, like telling them what is the scope, what's included, what's not included, when to use it. And then by the way, we have also done a lot of training for our go-to-market organization. So we work very closely with our sales enablement team and actually show them what they can use it for as well.
One of the challenges as well, I think, with clients when they get AI is how they engage with it when we produce a chatbot for them, and how we kind of deploy it with their approval, because it can go in doom loops almost of continual testing. Do you have any advice or tips as to how, that process of actually getting them more involved, or how would you position them in terms of that?
Who are you trying to get involved?
So it's B2B. So our clients, for example, want chatbots for their businesses to deploy in quite technical ways. Obviously, they're all learning as well. So it can be quite difficult sometimes to project manage that and to get the quality of information and training. How involved do you think the client should be within that process?
No, that's a very good question. I mean, Snowflake is also a B2B company. So I'll tell you how we do it, but happy to take it offline and talk about your specific use case as well. So for us, as actually, that was one of the interesting considerations we had is we spent a lot of energy and, love, if you will, to build these AI agents internally. And then we kept asking how will our customers do this, right? It's, especially now it's getting easier and easier every day. But the first iteration that we built was, putting all that energy into defining the semantic model correctly, putting all those verified queries, doing manual testing of thousands and thousands of queries. And we were will our customers do this? Will they have this level of, energy? And how do we make it easier for the customers, right? So we have been obviously working with a lot of our early customers to test and get feedback, but we've also been constantly thinking about how do we make it easier for them? How do we again bring AI for example, evaluations? How do we build the right evaluation frameworks for them so that we can make a lot of those manual work easier for them? So that's always a consideration for us. And when we say customer zero, it's not only we use it, but we bring that voice of the customer back to this equation as well. Actually, when I was at Instacart prior to Snowflake, I was a Snowflake customer. And so it's very important for me. Every time I come to the conversation, I'm like, oh, would I have done this if I was at Instacart, right? It's too much effort, right? And so constantly giving that feedback back to the product organization is don't just solve it for us internally. We will put the energy needed because we are obviously have a very strong incentive as Snowflake shareholders for our products to be successful. But how do you build it for our B2B customers, as you said, to make it easier for them to build this level of quality in their agents as well?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I know this is such an interesting and important topic, and if we could go on for the rest of the day, we probably would, because this is not going to end. Again, it's such an important thing, right? Like you say, trust isn't easy to say word, but it's really hard to build, right? But thank you so much for taking the time to give us actionable inputs on how to take, the word trust and instill in all the products that we're building today. And thanks so much for sharing your experiences as well.
Thanks for having me.